What's up, guys? I want to talk a little bit about pre-spawn fishing, and more specifically with swim baits. I'm not talking about your little 3-inch. I'm not talking about your Alabama rigs. I'm talking your glide baits, your big boot tails, your big wedge tails, like your Huddlestons, your multi-jointed baits, stuff like that. So right off the bat, for this technique, you want clear water, as clear as possible. Clearer the better. So, because a lot of time in this pre-spawn, you really got to fish slow because that water's still real cold. So when that water's still really cold in that below 60 range, or when it's just peaking 60, when those fish are just starting to pre-spawn and spawn, I'm throwing my soft plastic swim baits. I'm throwing my 5 to 7-inch, even bigger sometimes. As some people, they might throw up to 10-inch baits. I have no need for a 10-inch bait around here, so my 5-inch baits are perfect for now. When that water's a little bit colder on some days, or we have a real bad wind chill, or we have a cold front come in, I really like to throw my wedge tail style baits. As you can see, it's a wedge style tail, which means it's going to kick. This portion of the bait is just going to kick. That's all that's going to happen. It's going to look very realistic in the water. It's going to look a lot better than a boot tail. You can work this a lot slower. You can work this so slow that there's still slack in your line. That's how slow you want to be working this bait. A lot of times you're going to want to throw this into the deeper water and creep it up the bank towards the shallow end. So, because those fish are going to be facing the deeper water, waiting for the stuff like the trout and stuff like that to come up out of the deeper water. Soft plastic boot tails and stuff, this is when that water is just above 60. I like to throw these just because they give a little more action, a little more vibration. The water really attacks those aggressive fish, really gets those aggressive fish going. Nothing special about these. Throw them the same way I do with the boot tail, not the boot tails, the wedge tails. It's just fine. If you're running something like a line through bait, I recommend running the line through and then up to the top, so you can run this down into the rocks, into the weeds and stuff like that, and have the hook exposed on the top. A lot more weedless. And then when that water breaks the 62-ish mark, 63, I like to start throwing my hard baits, just because they give a little more noise off in the water sometimes. They have a bigger presence, I feel. They have a lot more drawing power. If you ever heard of Brandon Polnick talk about drawing power, it's a very big concept in the swim bait fishing world. It's a very important concept. When you're throwing something like little S-Waver 120 versus the S-Waver 168s and stuff like that, this bait has a lot more drawing power than this little bait. Okay? This is a 7-inch bait almost. It's like 6 3/4 inches. This is only a little 4-inch bait. This bait is going to bring your big fish out of those spots that nothing else will. They'll look at this bait and they'll let it pass on. They'll look at this bait and they'll hit it, just because this is a big, easy meal in that colder water. You can throw your smaller baits in ponds and stuff like that, but when you're out in your lakes, your rivers, I like to throw bigger baits. Throw these the same places you would with like jigs, right above those tree lines, right above logs, right next to logs, right next to brush piles, rock piles, stuff like that. I really like to throw these baits because that's where they really produce. One thing to remember is when you're fishing that deeper water, you're going to want a heavier bait just to get that bait down there quicker. Not a heavier bait, sorry. A quicker sinking bait. These two lures right here are the same weight. Just this is more buoyant, so I'm going to throw this bait down when the water's a little bit deeper in that 15 range. I'll throw this around my 8-foot range, just because this is a quicker sink rate. This is twice as quick as this sinking, so just keep that in mind. Play with your baits. You can modify them with like suspend strips, suspend dots, stuff like that. You can modify them up. I see a lot of people, they can even drill holes, put some lead inserts and stuff like that if you really want to go that far into it. But yeah, just remember, play around with your baits. Make sure you know your bait like the back of your hand when you're fishing with swim baits. It's very, very, very important. Then once that water, most fish are in full-blown spawn, or right before they full-blown spawn, I'm throwing my multi-jointed baits. They look more realistic, and they're a little bit more forgiving on the bottom, I believe. A little less little more weedless, stuff like that. Just because of how tight of an action and out wandering, kind of catching stuff up. So I'm going to throw things like a BBZ or triple trouts or any bait like that. Your Boca, bull shads. You can even go to like the Roman made tricks and stuff like that. That's the kind of baits I'm talking about. I just feel like I have more success with these when the water's a little bit warmer. You can fish these as slow as the glide baits, but I just feel like these baits do better at a warmer water, quicker pace, because you just can't do as much with this bait as I can a glide bait. So these are giving me a warmer, more aggressive fish. I'm going to throw those baits at. So yeah, that's about it. I'm going to throw light as line as I possibly can on all of my baits. Be as finesse as possible. That's another thing. In that colder water, I want to be as finesse as possible. So when that water is still real cold, that's why I'm going to throw my very, very finesse, slow kicking baits. When I get into hard baits, I'm starting with glide baits and I'll end with multi-jointed baits. Just because the glide baits have a little less action. The multi-jointed baits are all over the place. They're real quick. The glide baits are real slow, moving back and forth kind of baits. Those fish can track them a lot better than they can the multi-jointed baits. Just keep that in mind when you're looking at the temperature of the water. Again, make sure if you're fishing 15-20 feet of water, not always a swim bait's not a very good choice for that sometimes. But when you are going to choose to fish a swim bait into there, fish a swim bait with a quicker sink rate. Don't fish something with like a 4 to 5 second per foot sink rate. Fish something that has a foot for every second or a foot for every 2 seconds, something like that. Just keep those little tips and tricks in mind, and your pre-spawn will be a lot better than usual. I kind of picked those tips and tricks up during the year last year, and towards the beginning and then towards the end, I really started putting 2 and 2 together and really started producing some nice fish. So hopefully you guys liked the video. Thanks for watching, and good luck.